Hello there, and welcome to the RareMindset channel. I'm so glad you found your way here. Tonight, you don't have to force sleep to happen. You can simply let your mind soften, the way the surface of a lake smooths out when the wind finally calms down. As you listen, you might notice something gentle and familiar. The mind naturally loves to wander through time. It drifts into old rooms, old songs, old seasons, not to get stuck there, but to gather warmth and meaning. This is a quiet documentary journey through memory and nostalgia, how the brain stores moments, how it revisits them, and why certain fragments of the past can feel like a safe blanket for the nervous system. Nothing here is medical advice, just calm, educational psychology offered slowly, like a bedside conversation with the lights turned low. If you feel your attention fading in and out, that's perfect. Learning can be soft, rest can be intelligent, and sleep can arrive in its own unhurried way. Chapter 1: The Fundamentals of Memory Encoding. Fact 1: The encoding process. Memory begins with a simple, almost poetic translation, the outside world becoming an inner trace. Psychological studies suggest that encoding is the process through which raw experience, light, sound, meaning, emotion, gets transformed into a form the brain can store. Sometimes the brain encodes semantically, focusing on meaning, like understanding the idea in a sentence rather than remembering each word. Sometimes it's visual, holding onto shapes, faces, and scenes like a quiet snapshot. And sometimes it's acoustic, storing the rhythm of a voice or the contour of a melody. You can imagine encoding as the mind's gentle note-taking, subtle, selective, and constantly happening beneath awareness, even as you rest. Fact 2: Selective attention. Closely connected to encoding is the mind's ability to choose what even gets the chance to become memory. Selective attention is the brain's soft spotlight, turning toward certain details while letting others fade into the background. Classic theories like filter theory and the bottleneck model describe attention as a limited passageway. Only so much experience can move through at once. This isn't a flaw, it's a kindness. Without attention's filtering, the mind would be flooded by every sound, every texture, every shifting shadow. Instead, attention quietly prioritizes what seems relevant. A name, a feeling, a change in tone. Even now, as you listen, attention may drift, and in that drifting, it's still protecting your mind's limited space. Fact 3: Sensory memory buffers. Before short-term memory even begins, the brain holds the world in tiny, vanishing containers called sensory memory buffers. These are fleeting traces, so brief you might miss them if you tried to catch them. Iconic memory holds visual impressions for a fraction of a second, like the afterglow of a lamp when you close your eyes. Echoic memory keeps sounds lingering a bit longer, allowing the mind to stitch together words into sentences. Haptic memory, tied to touch, holds the impression of texture, warmth, pressure, softness, just long enough to be recognized. Research in cognitive psychology suggests these buffers help your brain decide what deserves further processing. They are like gentle doorways. Most sensations pass through and dissolve, and a few continue inward. Fact 4: Miller's Law. In the calm architecture of cognition, there's a long-observed limit to what working memory can hold at once. Miller's Law describes the tendency for people to manage around 7 items, give or take, in short-term memory. It's not a rigid number, more like an average rhythm of capacity. Working memory is the mind's small mental desk, where information is temporarily arranged, compared, and used. Information theory and cognitive load research suggest that when too many items arrive at once, the system becomes strained and details slip away. In a sleep-friendly way, this is reassuring. You don't have to hold everything. Your mind was never built to carry the whole day at once. It was built to release, to simplify, to choose. Fact 5: Chunking strategy. Because working memory is limited, the brain naturally looks for ways to organize. Chunking is one of its most soothing strategies. It gathers small pieces into larger, familiar groups. Instead of remembering a long string of separate items, the mind forms a pattern, like turning scattered stars into a constellation. Cognitive psychology suggests chunking works because familiarity reduces mental effort. A phone number becomes easier when grouped. A melody becomes easier when heard as phrases rather than single notes. Chunking is essentially the brain saying, "Let me make this simpler." And it doesn't only apply to numbers. It applies to routines, languages, memories of places. Over time, life becomes more memorable when it becomes more meaningfully grouped, as if the mind prefers gentle bundles over loose fragments. Fact 6. Maintenance rehearsal. Sometimes memory stays alive through repetition, like quietly tapping a word again and again so it doesn't fade. Maintenance rehearsal is the process of repeatedly thinking about information to keep it active in working memory. Research on the phonological loop, a component of working memory, suggests we often rehearse through inner speech, silently repeating a phrase, a name, a detail. This is common in rote learning, holding something just long enough to use it. It's a temporary kind of remembering, like balancing a feather on the palm of your hand. If you stop the gentle repetition, the feather drifts away. Maintenance rehearsal can be useful, but it can also explain why certain worries repeat at night. The mind rehearses what it thinks matters, even when you're tired. Fact 7. Elaborative rehearsal. In a similar quiet way, some remembering goes deeper, not by repeating, but by connecting. Elaborative rehearsal involves thinking about meaning, creating links between new information and what you already know. The levels of processing effect suggests that deeper, semantic processing tends to create stronger long-term memory than shallow attention to surface details. If you learn a concept and relate it to a personal experience, it gains roots. If you connect a name to a story, it becomes easier to retrieve later. This kind of rehearsal is less like tapping a word to keep it awake and more like planting it gently into rich soil. Your brain, when given the chance, prefers meaning over noise. And meaning, calm, coherent meaning, often feels naturally soothing. Fact 8. The self-reference effect. There's a tender bias in human memory. We remember things better when they relate to us. The self-reference effect describes how information connected to one's self-schema, your sense of who you are, tends to be encoded more strongly. Psychological studies suggest that when you ask, "How does this apply to me?" the brain engages deeper processing, weaving the information into autobiographical networks. This isn't selfishness, it's structure. The self is one of the mind's main organizing maps. Even neutral facts can become more memorable when attached to personal meaning, your goals, your values, your memories. In the background, the brain is always building a story called me, and it tends to keep the details that fit into that story, like bookmarks in a long, quiet book you've been writing your whole life. Fact 9. Context-dependent memory. Memory retrieval often depends on place, atmosphere, and subtle environmental cues. Context-dependent memory refers to how recall becomes easier when the retrieval environment resembles the environment where encoding happened. Research suggests the mind stores not only the main information, but also surrounding details, light quality, background sounds, even the feeling of a room. Later, when those cues return, they can gently unlock what was stored. This is why a classroom smell can bring back a lesson, or a certain street corner can awaken a forgotten conversation. The environment becomes part of the memory's label. In a restful way, you can think of context as the memory's home address. When you return near that address, physically or imaginatively, the memory answers the door more easily, without force. Fact 10. State-dependent memory. Just as the outer world can cue recall, the inner world can too. State-dependent memory describes how remembering tends to improve when your internal state matches the one you had during encoding. Mood, arousal, and physiological state can become part of the memory's context. Studies on mood-congruent memory suggest that when you're calm memories may feel more accessible. When you're stressed, tense memories can rise more easily. This doesn't mean your feelings are facts. It simply means the brain uses state as a retrieval key. Tonight, As your body gradually settles, you may notice softer memories floating nearer, moments of safety, quiet, and warmth. And even if sleep comes before you finish listening, your nervous system still benefits from practicing this gentle state, because the brain remembers, in its own way, what calm feels like. Chapter 2. The Architecture of Long-Term Storage. Fact 11. Declarative Memory. As the mind transfers experience into long-term storage, one major pathway is what psychologists call declarative memory, the kind you can consciously bring to the surface and describe with words. It includes facts you've learned and events you can revisit in your imagination. Researchers sometimes call it explicit memory because it's available to awareness, like a book you can open and read. Yet it doesn't always feel like reading. Often it feels like remembering, a quiet certainty that Paris is a city, that your childhood home had a certain smell, that a person once said something kind. Declarative memory is also social in nature. It allows us to share knowledge, tell stories, and teach one another. In a gentle way, it's the part of memory that turns private experience into something we can calmly name. Fact 12. Episodic memory. Within declarative memory, episodic memory holds the felt sense of "I was there." It's the mind's ability to store personal experiences as episodes in time, what happened, where it happened, and often how it felt. Some researchers describe this as mental time travel, because episodic recall can place you back inside a moment, with a certain angle of light, a certain tone of voice, a particular weather in the air. The term chronesthesia is sometimes used to describe this awareness of subjective time, your ability to sense yourself in a past scene. Episodic memories are rarely perfect recordings, but they are richly human. They help you learn from experience, recognize patterns, and feel continuity. And at night, episodic memory can drift up like a slow tide, bringing old scenes to the shore of awareness. Fact 13. Semantic memory. In a similar quiet way, semantic memory is the brain's storehouse for general knowledge, meanings, concepts, definitions, and facts about the world. Unlike episodic memory, it doesn't require a specific time and place. You usually don't remember the exact moment you learned what gravity means. You simply know it. Cognitive science often describes semantic memory as a network of concept nodes, connected by association and meaning. One idea activates another, the way a lantern lights a nearby path. This is why thinking of ocean might bring up waves, salt, vacation, or blue. Semantic memory helps you understand language and make predictions. It's less like reliving a scene and more like holding a calm map of how things fit together. And as you relax, your mind may gently roam this inner library. Fact 14. Procedural memory. Not all memory is something you can easily explain. Procedural memory is the quiet intelligence of skills, how to ride a bicycle, type on a keyboard, tie a knot, or play a familiar pattern on an instrument. It's often called implicit memory because it operates beneath conscious description. You can do the action without fully narrating how you do it. Research links procedural learning to circuits involving the basal ganglia and motor systems, where repeated practice gradually becomes smooth and automatic. There's something comforting about procedural memory. It reduces effort. Once a skill is learned, the body remembers with less strain, leaving the mind freer. In daily life, this is why routines can feel soothing. They lean on procedural memory, letting you move through tasks with less decision and less cognitive noise, especially when you're tired. Fact 15. Flashbulb memories. Some memories feel unusually vivid, as if lit by a bright internal camera. Flashbulb memories are those moments when people recall where they were and what they were doing during a significant event, often public, sometimes personal. Psychology research suggests that the vividness comes from emotional arousal and the brain's tagging systems, particularly interactions between the amygdala and hippocampus. Yet vivid does not always mean accurate. A flashbulb memory can feel crystal clear while still shifting over time in its details. What tends to remain stable is the sense of importance, the feeling that this mattered. These memories can become reference points in a life story, like mile markers on a long road. And even when the event was not dramatic, high meaning can create its own brightness, like a quiet moment remembered for decades. Fact 16. Retrospective memory. Retrospective memory is what most people casually mean by remembering, the ability to recall or recognize information encountered in the past. It includes faces, names, conversations, and facts you once learned. Cognitive psychologists often distinguish recall, bringing something up without prompts, from recognition, knowing something is familiar when you see it. Recognition tends to feel easier, like the mind is saying, "Yes, I've met this before." Retrospective memory is essential for daily functioning, but it's also deeply personal. It holds the texture of your lived history, and because it's cue-dependent, small triggers can awaken it. A certain phrase, a familiar scent, a particular chord, each can act like a soft knock on a door, inviting the past to open without effort or urgency. Fact 17. Prospective memory. Alongside remembering the past, the mind also remembers the future in a way. Prospective memory is the ability to remember to perform an intended action later, sending a message, taking something with you, attending an appointment. Researchers often describe two types of cues: time-based cues like at 6 p.m. and event-based cues like when I see my friend. Prospective memory is quietly complex because it requires holding an intention in the background while living the rest of life in the foreground. When it works well, it feels effortless. An intention simply rises at the right moment. When it fails, it's rarely laziness. It's usually overload. And at night, it can be calming to remind yourself, you don't have to keep every future task awake in your mind. You can let tomorrow remember tomorrow. Fact 18. Associative networks. Many theories describe long-term memory as an associative network, a web of interconnected concepts. In this view, memories are not stored as isolated files, but as linked pathways. When one node activates, activation can spread to related nodes, a process known as spreading activation. This helps explain priming, where exposure to one idea subtly increases accessibility of related ideas. Think of it like walking through a dim hallway and brushing a light switch. One light turns on, and then another nearby glows, and soon the space feels more navigable. This network structure is part of why nostalgia can arrive unexpectedly. You hear a song, it activates an era, that era activates a friend, that friend activates a feeling of safety. The mind doesn't search in straight lines, it drifts along gentle connections. Fact 19. The forgetting curve. Even meaningful memories can fade when they are not revisited. The forgetting curve, associated with Hermann Ebbinghaus, describes a pattern in which memory retention declines over time without reinforcement. The steepest drop often happens soon after learning, and then the curve levels out. This is sometimes explained through decay and interference, traces weakening, or newer information crowding older information. Yet forgetting isn't simply failure. It's also efficiency. The brain cannot preserve every detail with equal strength, so it prioritizes what is used, what is rehearsed, what is emotionally marked, and what is connected to other knowledge. In a restful perspective, forgetting is part of mental tidiness. It's the mind clearing space, allowing you to live in the present without being buried under every yesterday. Fact 20. Permastore. Some memories, once stabilized, seem to endure for decades, living in what researchers sometimes call permastore, a theoretical form of extremely long-lasting memory. You might experience it when an old language phrase returns after years, or a childhood poem resurfaces perfectly intact. Research suggests that overlearning, continuing to practice even after you can do something correctly, helps create this durability. The memory becomes stable, less vulnerable to interference. Permastore hints at something quietly hopeful. Some parts of you remain, even as life changes. Knowledge can sleep inside the mind like a seed waiting for the right season. And this endurance is one reason nostalgia can feel so immediate. A small cue can awaken something ancient and intact, reminding you that your past is not gone. It is stored softly within you. Chapter 3, Defining Nostalgia, the Bittersweet Emotion. Fact 21, Etymology of Nostalgia. Nostalgia once lived in the language of medicine before it became a word of everyday emotion. Historically, it was described as a condition of homesickness, especially among soldiers far from home. The term comes from Greek roots, nostos, meaning return home, and algos, meaning pain. In a way, the original definition already contained the central paradox, home as comfort and distance as ache. Over time, psychology and cultural research reframed nostalgia, not as an illness, but as a common emotional experience with meaningful functions. When you feel nostalgia, you're not malfunctioning. You're sensing your bond with time, place, and belonging. The word itself carries a gentle truth. Some longings are simply signs of love for where you've been and who you were. Fact 22. Nostalgia as a bittersweet state. Modern psychological research often describes nostalgia as bittersweet, a mixed emotion that blends warmth with longing. The sweetness comes from connection, remembered love, remembered safety, remembered meaning. The bitterness comes from distance. The moment is gone, people change, time moves forward. Mixed emotions like this reveal emotional complexity, showing that the mind can hold more than one tone at once. Nostalgia can be tender without being tragic, and comforting without being purely happy. In low-arousal moments, like nighttime, this bittersweet quality can feel especially soothing because it invites acceptance. You don't have to edit your past into all joy or all pain. Nostalgia lets you experience a fuller truth, that beautiful moments can be real, and their passing can be real too, without either one canceling the other. Fact 23. Approach motivation. Though nostalgia looks backward, it often nudges people forward. Studies in positive psychology suggest nostalgia can increase approach motivation, the gentle drive to connect, to pursue goals, to reach out rather than withdraw. When the mind remembers meaningful relationships or moments of personal strength, it can quietly remind you, you are capable of belonging, you have done hard things before, you have been loved. That reminder can create behavioral activation, not in a frantic way, but in a steady, human way. Nostalgia can prompt someone to send a message, repair a bond, or return to a cherished hobby. It's as if the past offers proof that warmth is possible and that meaning has existed before. Even as you rest, your mind may be gathering these proofs softly, like stones to build a calmer path tomorrow. Fact 24. Nostalgia versus reminiscence. Reminiscence is the act of recalling. Nostalgia is the emotional flavor that sometimes arrives with recall. You can remember a detail without nostalgia, like reciting a fact. Nostalgia involves autonomic consciousness, the sense of personally re-entering a past moment with emotional awareness. It also differs from simple daydreaming, because nostalgia tends to carry a feeling of significance, as if the memory matters to who you are. Some research suggests nostalgia influences effective forecasting too, how we predict our future emotions, by reminding us that life can contain meaning and connection. In a calm documentary sense, it's helpful to think of reminiscence as the doorway, and nostalgia as the warm light inside the room. Not every remembered scene is nostalgic, but nostalgia often needs memory as its entrance. Fact 25. Universality of nostalgia. Across cultures and across ages, people report nostalgic experiences, suggesting nostalgia is close to universal. Researchers in social and evolutionary psychology propose that nostalgia may serve adaptive functions, strengthening bonds, increasing resilience, and reaffirming identity during uncertain times. Even though the specific content differs, different songs, foods, landscapes, traditions, the emotional pattern remains recognizable, warmth braided with longing. This universality is quietly comforting, especially at night. If you've ever felt nostalgic and wondered why, it can help to know you're participating in something deeply human. The mind appears to carry a built-in ability to look back and extract comfort, like an inner practice of returning home. Nostalgia, in this sense, is not just personal, It's part of how human beings regulate emotion and preserve connection. Fact 26. The buffer effect. Nostalgia is often described as a psychological buffer, something that cushions people against loneliness, stress, or existential unease. Some researchers connect this to ideas in terror management theory, where reminders of meaning and belonging soften fears about uncertainty and impermanence. Nostalgia can restore a sense of being held within a larger story: family, friendships, community, culture, personal growth. This doesn't erase difficulty, but it can reduce the sharp edges of isolation. In a gentle way, nostalgia says, "You have been connected before," and that message can create emotional resilience. At bedtime, when the mind can feel especially solitary, nostalgic reflection may act like a quiet companion. Not a distraction, but a reassurance, proof that your life contains threads of warmth that still exist within you, even in silence. Fact 27. Personal nostalgia. Personal nostalgia is the longing for events you directly lived through. Your own birthdays, your own school years, your own ordinary mornings that later became precious. It draws heavily on autobiographical memory, especially episodic scenes layered with emotion. Personal nostalgia can be triggered by surprisingly small cues: the smell of soap, the feel of cold air on your face, a familiar kind of laughter. Psychological work suggests that these memories often highlight belonging and identity, moments when you felt seen, safe, or alive. The longing is not always for the exact event. Sometimes it's for the version of you that existed then, or for the simplicity of that life chapter. And yet, revisiting it can be restorative. It reminds the nervous system that safety has been real before, and therefore can be real again. Fact 28. Historical nostalgia. Not all nostalgia is for what you personally experienced. Historical nostalgia is longing for a time period you never lived through, a decade seen in films, a simpler era described in stories, an imagined past shaped by culture. Researchers sometimes call this vicarious nostalgia because it is borrowed through collective images, music, fashion, and shared narratives. It can connect you to cultural heritage, offering a sense of rootedness even without direct memory. Yet historical nostalgia can also be selective, smoothing away complexity. In a sleep-friendly way, it can still serve a function. It offers the mind a symbolic refuge, a place to rest imagination. The key is remembering what it is: a story-shaped longing. Not a factual report, but an emotional landscape the mind uses to find calm, continuity, and belonging. Fact 29. Frequency of nostalgia. Many people experience nostalgia often. Some studies suggest several times a week, sometimes even daily, depending on personality and life circumstances. This makes nostalgia less like a rare event and more like a regular emotional rhythm. It can rise during quiet moments, during transitions, or when the mind is gently unoccupied, like in the shower, on a late walk, or lying in bed with the lights low. From the perspective of normative psychology, nostalgia appears to be a common tool for emotional regulation, often emerging when the mind seeks connection or meaning. At night, when stimulation drops, the brain has room to wander and nostalgia may surface more easily. If it does, you can treat it like a passing cloud, soft, meaningful, and temporary, rather than something you must solve. Fact 30. Nostalgia as a social glue. Nostalgia is not only private, it can be deeply social. Researchers describe nostalgia as a kind of social glue because shared memories strengthen group bonds. When friends recall that summer, or families repeat stories at gatherings, they are reinforcing collective identity and cohesion. The memory becomes a shared possession, a small culture of its own. Social psychology suggests that collective remembering can increase trust and closeness because it signals we have history. We belong to each other's timeline. Even solo nostalgia often includes others, faces, voices, shared places. This may be part of nostalgia's function. It reminds you that you have been woven into relationships. And even if life feels quiet right now, those social threads are stored in you, like gentle evidence that you have mattered to others, and they to you. Chapter 4, Sensory Gateways, Scent, Sound, and Recall. Fact 31, the Proustian Phenomenon. There is a special intimacy between smell and memory, often called the Proustian phenomenon, named after Marcel Proust's description of a scent, and taste unlocking a flood of childhood recollection. Neuroscience and psychology suggest that olfaction is uniquely connected to limbic structures involved in emotion and memory. The olfactory bulb has close pathways to areas that help encode feeling, which may be why scent-triggered memories can feel vivid, immediate, and deeply personal. A single smell, rain on warm pavement, clean laundry, a certain spice, can open an entire chapter of life without warning. And because scent is often tied to home and safety, these memories can feel like returning. In the quiet of nighttime, even imagining a scent can sometimes evoke the same gentle effect, as if the brain knows the route. Fact 32, auditory anchoring. Sound can also act as an anchor, fastening you to a specific moment in time. A certain song, a ringtone, a crowd's murmur, or even the hum of an appliance can transport you instantly into a past scene. Researchers studying music-evoked autobiographical memories, sometimes abbreviated as MEAMs, suggest that music is especially powerful because it combines rhythm, emotion, and repetition. Songs are often heard during social moments, transitions, and identity-forming periods, which gives them strong associative links. The brain doesn't just store the melody, it stores the context around it, the car ride, the friend beside you, the season outside the window. This is why a few notes can feel like a doorway. And at bedtime, soft sounds can gently guide the mind, not toward stimulation, but toward a slow, comforting kind of time travel. Fact 33, visual priming. In a similarly gentle way, images can prime the mind to remember. Visual priming describes how seeing a cue, like a photograph, a familiar object, or a certain color palette, can make related memories more accessible. A photo doesn't simply show you the past, it can help reconstruct it, guiding the brain toward details that were stored but quiet. Researchers emphasize retrieval cues here. The mind often needs a handle to grasp what it knows. Visual processing is also deeply linked to spatial memory, where things were, how a room looked, the layout of a street. When you see an old image, the brain begins filling in the unseen edges. What happened before the photo, what happened after, what you felt that day. And in this reconstruction, the past can feel close, like a softly lit scene returning to focus. Fact 34, tactile nostalgia. Touch can carry nostalgia in an understated, grounding way. Tactile nostalgia is when a physical sensation, like the texture of a blanket, the smoothness of a worn book cover, the coolness of metal, the knit of a sweater, awakens memories of comfort or safety. Psychology and neuroscience link touch to the somatosensory cortex, but also to emotional regulation systems. Touch is one of the earliest senses tied to attachment and calm. This may be why certain fabrics feel like childhood, or why holding an object can summon the feeling of a person who once held it. Touch is also slow, requiring contact, inviting stillness. At night, as your body rests against sheets or pillow, you may notice that tactile cues don't just signal the present. They can quietly echo the past, reminding the nervous system of warmth and protection. Fact 35, gustatory memory. Taste is another powerful keeper of time. Gustatory memory refers to the strong connection between flavor and the recollection of specific gatherings, family rituals, and cultural identity. A single bite can revive a whole scene, a kitchen's light, a relative's voice, a holiday table, the feeling of being welcomed. Researchers note that taste rarely acts alone. It blends with smell, texture, and emotion, creating a multi-layered cue. Food and identity are closely linked. The meals you grew up with often become symbols of belonging. Even when circumstances change, the flavor can return you to a sense of home. In a sleep-friendly sense, this is comforting. Memory isn't only abstract, it's embodied. The body remembers safety through taste, and sometimes even imagining a familiar meal can soften the mind, the way a warm memory softens a tense day. Fact 36. Cross-modal interaction. The mind doesn't store senses in separate boxes. It integrates them into a single experience. Cross-modal interaction refers to how multiple senses work together to create a multi-dimensional memory. The sound of a song can bring back the smell of a room. The sight of a street can bring back the taste of a snack you ate there. Researchers in multisensory integration suggest the brain synchronizes these inputs, binding them into a coherent episode. This is one reason nostalgia can feel immersive. It's not just a thought, but a recreation of a sensory world. When several senses align, real cues or imagined ones, the past can feel almost present. At bedtime, you can let this work gently for you. You don't have to chase memories. You can simply allow a few sensory hints, soft sound, comfortable touch, dim light, to invite the mind into calmer, slower mental landscapes. Fact 37. The amygdala's role in scent. Smell-based memories often feel more emotionally intense than sight-based ones, and the amygdala may be part of why. The amygdala helps evaluate emotional salience. What matters, what feels safe, what feels important. Research suggests olfactory pathways have relatively direct connections into limbic regions, sometimes described as a kind of bypass that reaches emotion quickly. This can make scent-triggered memories feel sudden and vivid, as if emotion arrives before explanation. Yet this intensity doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can also be deeply comforting. A scent associated with care, soap from a childhood home, a familiar perfume, the smell of books, can quickly tag the moment as safe. At night, when the mind is quieter, emotional tags may feel even more pronounced. And understanding this mechanism can help you simply observe. My brain is labeling this as meaningful, and then let it pass gently through. Fact 38. Ambient sound and mood. Not every nostalgic feeling comes from a specific memory. Sometimes the mind enters an era-like mood from ambient sound alone. The distant hum of traffic, rain on a window, a ceiling fan's steady rhythm. Research on environmental cues and mood induction suggests that background sound can create a general emotional setting, nudging the brain towards certain associations without clear images. A crackling noise might evoke old radios or fireplaces. A distant train might evoke late-night travel or childhood bedrooms. This isn't the mind being random, it's the associative network doing quiet work, connecting present sensations to stored patterns. Ambient sound can become a soft bridge between now and then. And for sleep, this can be useful. Gentle, low-level sounds reduce sudden silence, stabilize attention, and invite the mind into a steady emotional tone, one where drifting feels natural. Fact 39. The snapshot effect. The brain often stores high-impact moments as sensory stills, sometimes described as a snapshot effect. Rather than recording every second, memory may preserve a few vivid frames. A face at a doorway, sunlight on a floor, the color of a sky, the sound of a laugh. Cognitive research on sensory registers and emotional encoding suggests that when emotion is present, wonder, joy, surprise, the brain tags certain sensory details as worthy of keeping. These snapshots can return later in dreams or nostalgia, sometimes without full narrative. You may not remember the whole day, but you remember the exact pattern on a dress or the way a room smelled. At night, these snapshots can float up like small photographs in the dark. You don't need to assemble them into a story. You can let them be what they are, gentle fragments kept for a reason. Fact 40. Habituation and rarity. The mind is sensitive to what is rare. Habituation means that repeated, common stimuli lose their power to capture attention. Your brain stops reacting strongly to what is always there. But when a scent or sound is unusual, novelty detection increases its salience. Researchers sometimes describe this in terms of signal-to-noise ratio. Rare signals stand out against the background. This is why a seldom-heard lullaby, a seasonal smell, or a specific old dial-up tone can trigger stronger nostalgia than everyday cues. The brain treats rarity as meaningful because it might indicate something important to learn. In emotional life, rarity can also mean special. And so the uncommon cue becomes a key, opening a door you didn't know was still there. At bedtime, you can notice how small, rare details from your past still live in you, quietly waiting, not demanding. Chapter 5. The Social Utility of Looking Backward. Fact 41. Counteracting Loneliness. Nostalgia often arrives when the mind senses a gap between self and others, between now and then. Research suggests that nostalgic reflection can counteract loneliness by reminding you of real social bonds you've had and the roles you've played in other people's lives. It's not only a memory of company, it's a memory of belonging. When the brain reactivates scenes of friendship, care, shared humor, or simple togetherness, it can restore a sense of social connectedness, even in the quiet of a room at night. In attachment terms, these memories can function like internal reminders. I have been safe with others before. This doesn't replace present relationships, of course, but it can soften the nervous system's alarm. The past becomes a small, gentle lantern, lighting up evidence that you have not always been alone. Fact 42. Empathy enhancement. In a similarly gentle way, nostalgia can widen the heart. Studies in social psychology suggest that when people engage in nostalgic reflection, they often report increased empathy, an enhanced ability to sense what others feel and to imagine another person's perspective. One reason may be that nostalgic memories frequently include close relationships, shared struggles, and moments of care. Revisiting those scenes can reactivate prosocial emotions, gratitude, tenderness, appreciation, making kindness feel more accessible. Empathy is not only a moral trait, it's also a social skill shaped by memory. When you remember what it felt like to be supported, you may become more ready to support others. Even at night, as you drift, nostalgia can act like quiet practice in perspective taking. It reminds the mind that human life is interwoven, and that other people's inner worlds are as rich and vulnerable as your own. Fact 43. Intergenerational bonding. Nostalgic storytelling can quietly stitch generations together. Research in narrative gerontology and developmental psychology suggests that when older adults share memories, they're not only recounting facts, they're offering meaning, lessons, and identity to younger listeners. This is sometimes linked to generativity, the impulse to guide and nurture those who come after. For younger people, these stories become emotional maps, where the family has been, what the culture has carried, what values endured. For older people, the telling can create coherence and dignity, reinforcing that their life experiences matter. Intergenerational bonding through nostalgia is also a way of exchanging time, one person lending the past, another lending attention. In a restful frame, it's comforting to remember that memory is not just stored, it is shared, and in sharing it becomes connection. Fact 44. Collective nostalgia. Beyond personal memories, groups can feel nostalgia too. Collective nostalgia is a shared longing for a group's glory days, a school's golden era, a sports team's peak, a nation's imagined simplicity. Social identity theory suggests that people derive part of their self-esteem from group membership, so remembering a valued group past can temporarily strengthen identity and pride. Yet collective nostalgia is complex. It can unify, but it can also oversimplify. The mind tends to smooth rough edges when it looks back, especially when it wants comfort. In a gentle documentary sense, collective nostalgia can be seen as the group version of self-soothing, a story that helps people feel rooted. At night, you may notice how certain eras feel emotionally safe in your imagination, not because they were perfect, but because they are symbolic homes for identity. Fact 45. Reducing prejudice. Collective memory doesn't always narrow the mind. It can also broaden it. Some research suggests that when collective nostalgia includes diverse, shared histories, memories of cooperation, multicultural community, or common struggle, it can reduce out-group bias. Through the lens of intergroup contact theory, remembering times when groups worked together can make harmony feel more normal and achievable. The key is what is being remembered. Nostalgia that idealizes separation may harden boundaries, while nostalgia that highlights shared humanity may soften them. In this way, memory becomes a social tool. It can justify distance, or it can invite closeness. For sleep listening, the calming takeaway is simple. Your mind can choose narratives that restore connection. In remembering the moments of human kindness across difference, the brain rehearses a safer world, and safety is deeply compatible with rest. Fact 46. Nostalgia as a gift. A memory can be offered like a present. Nostalgia as a gift refers to the act of sharing meaningful recollections, telling a story at dinner, showing someone an old photo, repeating a family phrase. Social exchange theory suggests relationships are partly maintained through exchanges of value, and stories can be a form of social currency. When you share a nostalgic moment, you're offering more than information. You're offering trust and intimacy. Here is a piece of my life. The listener, in turn, receives a role in your inner world. Reciprocity grows quietly from this. Even private nostalgia can carry the same structure. You give yourself the gift of a memory when you need comfort. At bedtime, you might imagine nostalgia as a small care package from your past self to your present self, wrapped in familiar details, meant to soothe. Fact 47. Attachment security. Many nostalgic memories revolve around attachment figures, people who provided protection, guidance, or steady affection. Attachment theory suggests that when we feel safe with someone, we internalize that safety as a secure base. Nostalgia can reactivate this secure base, even when the person is not present. A remembered voice, a remembered routine, a remembered gesture can bring the body a sense of being held in mind. This isn't childish, it's biological. The nervous system learns safety through relationship. Nostalgia can therefore reinforce attachment security by reminding you, I have been cared for, or sometimes, I have cared for others. Both are regulating. At night, if you find yourself drifting toward memories of safe people, you don't need to analyze it. You can simply let those memories do what they naturally do, quiet the alarm system and invite rest. Fact 48. Social validation. Nostalgia often highlights moments when you were valued, when someone laughed at your joke, trusted your help, wanted your presence. Research suggests that revisiting such memories can boost confidence and self-efficacy, especially in social contexts. Social validation works like a mirror. It reflects back that you have been acceptable, lovable, competent, included. Even if your present day feels uncertain, nostalgic recall can restore balance by reminding you of past successes and moments of connection. Social comparison is sometimes discussed as harmful, but internal comparison, remembering what you've already overcome, can be stabilizing. At bedtime, this is a quiet form of reassurance. You don't have to prove yourself tonight. You have already been someone to others. Your mind can rest on that evidence, the way a tired traveler rests when they finally find a familiar landmark. Fact 49. Communal narrative. Groups don't only share memories, they shape them into narratives, stories that explain who we are. Communal narrative is the way nostalgia helps a community build identity across time, supported by collective memory and oral tradition. Think of family sayings, hometown legends, shared songs, or rituals repeated each year. These narratives reduce uncertainty by creating continuity. This is what our people do. This is what we value. Psychology suggests that identity becomes steadier when it is story-shaped, because stories organize experience into meaning. Even your personal identity is partly communal, built from the language and symbols you inherited. At night, communal narratives can feel like a blanket, soft, predictable, familiar. And even if you no longer belong to certain groups, the stories they gave you may remain in your mind, offering structure when life feels wide and uncontained. Fact 50. Longevity of social ties. Nostalgia can help relationships last. Research suggests that people who engage in nostalgic reflection may be more likely to maintain long-term friendships and commitments, partly because nostalgia increases feelings of closeness and appreciation. Relationship maintenance is rarely dramatic. It's often small gestures sustained over time. Nostalgia can motivate those gestures by reminding you why a relationship mattered in the first place, shared experiences, mutual care, surviving difficulty together. It can also soften conflict by expanding the timeline. You remember not only the current tension, but also the history of connection beneath it. Commitment grows when the bond feels meaningful, and meaning is often stored in memory. In the quiet hours, you may find yourself thinking of someone you haven't seen in a while. If you do, you can let the memory simply be a thread, proof that connection can stretch across time without snapping. Chapter 6. The Reminiscence Bump in Life Stages. Fact 51. The Reminiscence Bump. As people age, they often recall an unusually high number of memories from adolescence and early adulthood, a pattern called the reminiscence bump. Psychological research suggests this happens because these years contain many firsts, many choices, and many identity-shaping experiences. The brain is building its adult story, and so it records deeply. Events from this period are often emotionally vivid and richly contextual. Friends, music, independence, love, mistakes, discoveries. Cognitive development and identity formation intersect here, making memories more accessible later in life. At night, when the mind drifts, it may naturally return to these chapters, not because they were perfect, but because they were formative. The reminiscence bump is like a well-worn path in the mind's forest, easy to find, often traveled, leading to the places where you first began to feel clearly defined. Fact 52. Novelty and firsts. Novelty leaves deeper tracks in memory than routine. Research suggests that first-time experiences, first job, first trip alone, first heartbreak, first moment of pride, are encoded more strongly because they are distinctive. Distinctiveness captures attention, and attention strengthens encoding. There's also a primacy-like effect within life chapters. Beginnings stand out because the brain is learning a new pattern and must pay close attention. Routine, by contrast, becomes compressed. Days that resemble each other blur together. This is why a single unusual afternoon from years ago can feel clearer than last week's repetitive errands. In a soothing frame, this reminds you that memory is not measuring worth, it's measuring contrast. Your mind remembers what changed you, and at bedtime, you can let yourself be gentle about what you don't recall. Much of life is meant to pass quietly, without leaving sharp footprints. Fact 53. Peak identity formation. Many developmental theories suggest that between roughly ages 15 and 25, identity formation accelerates. Erikson's stages of development describe this period as especially focused on ego identity, figuring out values, roles, belonging, and direction. Because identity is under construction, experiences in these years often become anchor points. The mind remembers the faces who witnessed you becoming yourself, the places where you tried on different versions of who you could be. Even small moments can carry weight because they felt like clues. This is why nostalgia often concentrates around adolescence and early adulthood. It's not only longing for youth, but longing for a time when the self felt newly possible. At night, these memories may arise like old diary pages, not demanding interpretation, just quietly reminding you that you have grown before, and you can continue to grow, slowly and steadily. Fact 54. The fatting affect bias. Memory is not only about what happened, it's also about how the emotional tone changes over time. The fatting affect bias describes a pattern where the negative emotion tied to unpleasant memories tends to fade faster than the positive emotion tied to pleasant ones. Researchers connect this to emotional regulation and hedonic adaptation. The mind gradually reduces distress to protect well-being. This doesn't mean painful events vanish, or that all people experience this equally, but the general bias suggests the psyche has self-soothing tendencies built in. It may be one reason nostalgia often feels warm. The rougher edges have softened. At bedtime, this concept can feel like permission. Your mind is allowed to heal by quieting old sting. And if a difficult memory arises, you can remember that the brain is capable, over time, of lowering emotional intensity, like turning down the volume on an old radio. Fact 55. Childhood amnesia. Most adults struggle to retrieve episodic memories from before about ages 2 to 4, a phenomenon called childhood amnesia. Research suggests this relates to hippocampal development and the growth of language. Early in life, the brain is forming memory systems, but the ability to create stable, narrative-like episodes is still emerging. Without language to label experience, and without mature neural structures to organize time and place, early memories may remain fragmented or inaccessible. This doesn't mean early life is unrecorded. It may be stored in sensations, emotional patterns, and implicit learning rather than clear episodes. In a calming sense, childhood amnesia is a reminder that the self is built gradually. You do not need to remember your very first years to have been shaped by them. The body and mind carry early learning quietly, like a foundation beneath a house, supporting you even when you can't see it. Fact 56. Adolescence and music. Many people find that the music they heard during adolescence remains especially powerful for the rest of life. Research links this to neuroplasticity and emotional salience during the reminiscence bump years. Music becomes entwined with identity, who you were becoming, who you wanted to be, who you were with. Songs also repeat, and repetition strengthens memory. A track can become a time capsule, containing not only sound but an entire social world. Late-night conversations, bus rides, headphones, first dances, private resilience. This is why music can evoke nostalgia so quickly it feels physical. At night, even imagining a song from those years can bring back a certain emotional temperature, warm, bittersweet, alive. And this can be sleep-friendly when held gently. You don't have to chase the feeling. You can let it wash through like a familiar tide, then recede. Fact 57. Life scripts. Memory is influenced not only by biology, but by culture. Life scripts are culturally shared expectations about when major milestones should happen: education, leaving home, career beginnings, marriage, parenting, achievement, retirement. Cognitive schema research suggests these scripts guide attention and recall. Events that fit the script are more likely to be encoded as significant and later remembered. When you look back, your mind may naturally organize your past around these expected chapters, even if your life didn't follow them exactly. This can create comfort, structure, and predictability, but it can also create pressure. In a soothing documentary frame, it helps to remember, scripts are guides, not laws. Your memory may highlight milestones, but your meaning can also live in unscripted moments, friendships, quiet victories, ordinary evenings. At bedtime, you can loosen the script and allow your life to be remembered as it truly was: unique, textured, and human. Fact 58. Cognitive efficiency. The brain's ability to encode efficiently appears to peak during adolescence and early adulthood, supported by high synaptic density and rapid information processing speed. Researchers suggest this cognitive efficiency helps explain why so many lasting memories form during the bump years. The mind is learning quickly, adapting quickly, storing richly. It's as if the brain is especially ready to build a large map of the world: new places, new people, new rules. Over time, encoding can become less intense, not because life becomes meaningless, but because novelty decreases and routines deepen. In a comforting way, this reframes memory changes across adulthood. It's not simply loss, it's a shift in what the brain prioritizes. At night, you might appreciate that your mind once absorbed life like sunlight, and now it may absorb it more like moonlight: slower, softer, still real. Fact 59. Stability in midlife. Many people report that midlife years can feel like a blur in memory. Psychology suggests one reason is routine encoding. When days resemble one another, fewer distinctive cues are stored. Without novelty, the brain compresses experience, saving energy by recording patterns rather than details. This doesn't mean midlife lacks meaning. It often holds deep responsibilities, relationships, and long-term projects. But meaning doesn't always equal memorability. When life becomes stable, memory becomes efficient, storing the gist rather than individual days. In a restful frame, this can be reassuring. You don't need to remember every Tuesday for your life to have mattered. The nervous system may have been focused on maintaining, providing, building quiet tasks that don't sparkle as firsts, yet hold real value. And at bedtime, if you feel nostalgia for earlier vividness, you can remember. The blur was often the sign of steadiness. Fact 60. Late life review. In later adulthood, many people naturally engage in life review, a reflective process of revisiting memories to create coherence and acceptance. Erickson described a late life task as achieving ego integrity, a sense that one's life, with all its complexity, forms a meaningful whole. Life review therapy in clinical settings uses structured remembering to support well-being, but even outside therapy, the tendency to look back is common. The mind may gather chapters, reevaluate events, forgive itself, and integrate lessons. This is not merely nostalgia, it's meaning-making across a lifespan. In a sleep-friendly tone, it can be comforting to view your own remembering as part of a universal human rhythm. You are a story-making creature, and sometimes the mind, especially in quiet hours, wants to gently hold the story in its hands, not to judge it but to understand it and to let it settle. Chapter 7. Reconstructive Memory and Rosy Retrospection. Fact 61. Reconstructive nature of memory. Memory is not a hidden video file waiting to be played. Research in cognitive psychology suggests memory is reconstructive, rebuilt each time from fragments, sensory traces, emotions, beliefs, and later knowledge. Frederick Bartlett's classic work, including the War of the Ghosts studies, showed that people reshape recalled stories to fit familiar schemas, mental frameworks for how things usually go. This reconstruction is not dishonesty, it's how the brain creates coherence. It prefers a story that makes sense over a perfect archive. At night, understanding this can be calming. If you can't recall an event clearly, it doesn't mean something is wrong. It may mean the brain is doing its normal work of stitching. Your memories are living materials, not museum artifacts. They shift as you shift, quietly aligning your past with the person you are now. Fact 62. Rosy retrospection. Rosy retrospection is the tendency to remember past events more positively than you experienced them in the moment. Research suggests that when an event ends, the brain doesn't store every discomfort equally. It often preserves an overall summary, and with time, the negative details may soften. This can lead people to miss periods that were actually stressful when they were living through them. School years, early jobs, difficult transitions, because the memory becomes warmed by distance. Rosy retrospection can be protective, supporting hope and resilience. Yet it can also create confusion. Why do I miss something that was hard? In a soothing frame, the answer is simple. You may not miss the hardship. You may miss the meaning, the closeness, the youthfulness, or the clear direction. The mind keeps the glow because glow helps you keep going. Fact 63. The peak end rule. When you evaluate an experience later, your judgment often relies heavily on two moments, the emotional peak and the ending. This pattern is called the peak end rule, linked to research on heuristics and duration neglect. It suggests that the mind doesn't average every minute. It compresses the experience into highlights. A long trip might be remembered mainly for one breathtaking view and the feeling on the last day. A relationship phase might be summarized by its most intense moment and how it concluded. This doesn't mean the rest didn't matter. It means the brain is economical. It uses shortcuts to store meaning efficiently. At bedtime, this can help you soften self-criticism. If you keep replaying the peak or the end of something, your mind may simply be doing what it naturally does, condensing. You can let the condensed image exist without letting it define your entire reality. Fact 64. Source monitoring error. Sometimes the mind remembers a detail but misplaces where it came from. This is called source monitoring error, confusing whether something happened in real life, in a dream, in a story, or in a conversation. Research on the misinformation effect shows that later information can blend into recall, especially when the original memory is weak or when suggestions are repeated. Source monitoring is a metacognitive skill. The mind checks the label on a memory, but labels can fade. At night, when you are drowsy, this can feel especially relevant. Dream fragments can mingle with real memories, creating a soft blur. This is normal. The sleepy brain is less focused on accuracy and more focused on integration. You don't have to solve every uncertainty. You can simply notice the minds blending and allow it, like colors gently running together in watercolor, without needing to pin them down. Fact 65. Memory consolidation. After a memory is formed, it doesn't immediately become stable. Memory consolidation is the process by which new memories are strengthened over time. Neuroscience research links consolidation to long-term potentiation, LTP, where repeated activation strengthens synaptic connections, and a protein synthesis that supports lasting neural change. In simple terms, the brain needs time to set a memory, like wet cement settling into form. This is partly why spacing and rest can improve learning. It's also why emotional events can feel clearer later, as the brain continues processing them after the moment ends. At bedtime, consolidation is quietly underway. Even if you feel like you did nothing today, your brain has been recording and sorting. Sleep will help stabilize what matters and soften what doesn't. You can rest with the knowledge that remembering is not only an act of will, it is also a biological process unfolding gently in the background. Fact 66. Hindsight bias. Hindsight bias is the "I knew it all along" effect. After an outcome is known, people tend to believe they predicted it more accurately than they actually did. Research suggests this bias is partly the brain's attempt to maintain a coherent story. Uncertainty feels uncomfortable, so the mind edits the past to make the present seem inevitable. This can distort memory of your earlier thoughts, making you feel you should have known, or that you were naive. In a compassionate frame, hindsight bias is not a personal flaw. It's a narrative pressure inside the cognitive system. At night, if you find yourself replaying decisions with harsh clarity, it may help to remember. The past version of you did not have the information you have now. Your memory is trying to create a tidy storyline. You can allow the story to loosen, making space for the truth that life is lived forward, not backward. Fact 67. Suggestibility. Memory is impressionable, especially when details are uncertain. Suggestibility refers to the tendency to incorporate misleading information from outside sources into one's recall. Elizabeth Loftus and other researchers demonstrated how questions, repetition, and social pressure can shape what people remember, sometimes creating false memories. This doesn't mean memory is useless. It means memory is social. The mind is influenced by authority, narrative, and expectation. In everyday life, suggestibility can happen subtly. Someone says, "Remember when you wore that red jacket?" And soon you can almost see it, even if it wasn't true. At bedtime, this can be calming to recognize because it reduces the need to treat every memory as courtroom evidence. Your memories are meaningful but not always precise. You can hold them gently, like stories told by a friend, valuing their emotional truth without demanding perfect accuracy. Fact 68. Boundary extension. The brain sometimes remembers more than it actually saw. Boundary extension is a cognitive bias where people recall a wider view of a scene than was present, as if the mind zoomed out beyond the frame. Researchers suggest this happens because the brain naturally constructs scenes, predicting what would logically exist just outside the edges. This is part of how perception stays smooth and continuous. The mind is always building the world, not just receiving it. Boundary extension reveals that memory and imagination cooperate. They fill in gaps to create coherence. In a sleep-friendly tone, it's comforting to realize that your mind is designed to complete pictures. When you remember a room from childhood, you may also remember the feeling of what was beyond it. That feeling can be real and regulating, even if the details are invented. The brain is not lying. It is constructing safety through continuity. Fact 69. Consistency bias. Consistency bias is the tendency to remember past attitudes and beliefs as being more similar to your current ones than they truly were. In other words, the mind edits your history to keep you feeling stable. This connects to cognitive dissonance and self-serving biases. It can be uncomfortable to admit you once believed something very different or that you once wanted a different life. So memory smooths the timeline. This bias can protect identity, but it can also hide growth. At night, it may help to gently resist the smoothing. You are allowed to have changed. In fact, change is evidence of learning. If you look back and feel puzzled by your past self, you might be seeing the truth more clearly than your bias would prefer. Let that truth be soft. You were doing your best with the mind you had then, and you became someone new by living through it. Fact 70. Positivity effect. As people age, many show a positivity effect. They attend to and remember positive information more than negative. Socio-emotional selectivity theory suggests that when time feels more limited, goals shift. People prioritize emotional meaning and well-being over novelty or status. Attention becomes more selective, turning toward what feels nourishing. This can shape memory, making older adults more likely to recall uplifting moments, kind interactions, and satisfying experiences. The positivity effect is not denial, it's a change in priorities. In a calming sense, it's as if the mind gradually learns what matters most for peace. At bedtime, you can borrow this wisdom regardless of age. You can let your attention rest on what is safe enough, warm enough, good enough. Not because you're ignoring reality, but because rest requires a certain emotional diet, one that the brain naturally moves toward when it seeks calm. Chapter 8. Neurobiology, the limbic system and memory. Fact 71. The hippocampus. Deep in the brain, the hippocampus plays a central role in forming new episodic memories, the kind that feel like lived scenes. Neuroscience research often describes the hippocampus as helping bind together the elements of an experience: the place, the time, the people, the sequence. It's also strongly involved in spatial navigation, which is why memory for events and memory for where often feel intertwined. Some studies suggest the hippocampus remains capable of neurogenesis, creating new neurons, across adulthood, though the extent in humans is still debated and varies by research methods. What remains clear is that the hippocampus is sensitive to context, novelty, and stress. In a calm bedtime frame, you can imagine the hippocampus as a gentle librarian of episodes, receiving daily experiences and deciding how they might be shelved, quietly, carefully, so that later you can return and find them again. Fact 72. The amygdala. Closely connected to memory is the amygdala, a structure deeply involved in emotional processing. The amygdala helps tag experiences with emotional significance, deciding what feels urgent, meaningful, or worth remembering. Research on fear conditioning and emotional salience shows that when emotion is high, the amygdala can strengthen memory formation, often through its interactions with the hippocampus. This is one reason emotionally charged events, both positive and negative, can feel so unforgettable. Yet the amygdala is not only about fear, it responds to intensity in general. Joy, surprise, pride, and tenderness can also be tagged as important. At night, when you replay an emotional moment, you may be feeling the amygdala's imprint, not a command to worry, but a signal that the moment mattered. Understanding this can soften the experience. Your brain is not trying to hurt you. It is trying to prioritize what felt significant. Fact 73. Prefrontal cortex. While the hippocampus helps form episodes and the amygdala adds emotional weight, the prefrontal cortex helps organize and manage memory in the present moment. It is strongly associated with working memory, holding and manipulating information, and with executive functions like planning, inhibition, and attention control. Research suggests the prefrontal cortex contributes to temporal sequencing, arranging memories in an order that makes sense, like placing events along a timeline. When you tell a coherent story about your day, the prefrontal cortex is part of that structure. It also helps you decide what to focus on and what to ignore, an important skill when the mind is overstimulated. At bedtime, as the brain shifts toward rest, prefrontal control can soften. Thoughts may become less linear, more dreamlike. This is normal. The narrator in your mind lowers its voice so deeper processing can begin. Fact 74. Neuroplasticity. The brain is not fixed, it is adaptable. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's capacity to reorganize by forming and strengthening neural connections across life. Researchers link plasticity to processes like synaptic pruning, removing unused connections, and Hebbian learning, often summarized as neurons that fire together, wire together. This means repetition, emotion, and attention can gradually shape what becomes easier to think, feel, and do. Plasticity can be encouraging in a gentle way. You are not trapped in a single mental pattern forever. Yet plasticity is also neutral. It strengthens what you practice, including worries if they are rehearsed repeatedly. At night, one soothing use of plasticity is to practice calm, slow breathing, gentle reflection, safe imagery. Even small, repeated moments of rest can become easier over time because the brain learns what you return to. Fact 75. Cortisol and memory. Stress chemistry shapes memory in complex ways. Cortisol, a hormone released through the HPA axis during stress, can impair hippocampal function when levels are high or prolonged, making it harder to encode and retrieve certain details. Yet stress can also enhance amygdala-based emotional memory, leaving you with strong feelings and vivid fragments. This is why stressful experiences can be remembered as intense emotions without clear timelines. It's important to frame this gently. Stress responses are not moral failures, they are survival systems. At bedtime, if your mind feels emotionally loud but narratively unclear, it may simply reflect this biology. You can respond with compassion. Rather than forcing clarity, you can allow the nervous system to settle. Sleep, relaxation, and safety cues can help shift the brain away from stress mode, supporting a calmer balance between emotional tagging and contextual memory. Fact 76. Acetylcholine. Learning and attention depend on chemical messengers, and acetylcholine is one of the key neurotransmitters involved in encoding new information. Research links acetylcholine to the cholinergic system, which supports alertness, selective attention, and memory formation, especially within circuits connecting the cortex and hippocampus. When acetylcholine activity is balanced, the brain is better at taking in new material and distinguishing important signals from background noise. This is one reason focused attention improves learning. The chemistry of attention helps the brain write cleaner memory traces. At night, acetylcholine dynamics shift with sleep stages, and the brain transitions away from external learning toward internal processing. In a calming sense, you can imagine acetylcholine as part of the daytime ink that helps you write experiences down, while nighttime becomes the time when the brain quietly edits files and binds those notes into a longer story. Fact 77. Glutamate. Glutamate is the brain's most abundant excitatory neurotransmitter, and it plays a major role in synaptic change, especially in long-term potentiation, a key mechanism in learning and memory. When neurons communicate using glutamate, certain receptors help strengthen connections based on activity patterns. This is part of how experiences leave traces. Repeated or meaningful activation increases the likelihood that the pathway will be used again. Yet excitation must be balanced. The brain also relies on inhibitory systems to prevent overload. In a sleep-friendly perspective, glutamate is like the spark that allows learning to take hold, while rest helps regulate the system so it doesn't burn too brightly. You can think of your brain as a living network that learns through activation and stabilizes through recovery. Sleep is not wasted time. It is part of the learning cycle that keeps excitation from becoming strain. Fact 78. The entorhinal cortex. The entorhinal cortex acts as a gateway between the neocortex and the hippocampus, helping funnel process sensory information into memory systems and helping bring stored memory back out into awareness. It's part of the interface between perception and memory, between what you're experiencing and what you've experienced before. Research suggests this region is important for linking cues to episodes and for navigation through both physical and mental space. When a small cue triggers a rich recollection, Networks passing through the entorhinal cortex may be involved in that smooth access. In a gentle bedtime metaphor, you can imagine the entorhinal cortex as a quiet hallway connecting two wings of a library, the wing where the world is perceived and the wing where it is remembered. At night, as external perception dims, this hallway becomes busier with inward traffic, memories moving, reorganizing, finding their places. Fact 79. Neural networks. Memories are not stored in a single spot like files in a cabinet. Research in connectionism and parallel distributed processing suggests memories are represented across distributed neural networks. Different aspects of an experience, visual details, sounds, emotions, meanings, are stored in different regions, and remembering involves reactivating a pattern across the network. This is one reason memory can be partial. You may recall the feeling but not the face, the place but not the words. It's also why cues can be so effective. Activating one piece of the pattern can help the rest return. Distributed storage makes memory resilient. Even if one pathway is weak, others can support recall. In a calming sense, you are not holding your past in a single fragile container. Your past is woven through you, spread out like roots, quietly supporting your sense of self, even when individual details feel far away. Fact 80. Default Mode Network (DMN). When you are not focused on an external task, when you daydream, reflect, or gently drift, the brain often engages a set of regions called the default mode network. Research links the DMN to self-reflection, autobiographical memory, imagining the future, and creating narrative meaning. The DMN is active when attention turns inward, which is why it often becomes prominent at bedtime. In a documentary sense, the DMN is the brain's storyteller at rest, connecting scattered scenes into a sense of me across time. This can be soothing, but it can also lead to rumination if the stories become stuck. For sleep listening, the gentle aim is to let the DMN wander without gripping, allowing thoughts to float like paper boats on a slow river. The brain can reflect without forcing conclusions, and in that softness, sleep often finds you. Chapter 9. Self-Continuity and Personal Identity. Fact 81. Self-Continuity. Self-continuity is the sense that the you of today is connected to the you of years ago. Researchers sometimes call this diachronic identity, your feeling of being the same person across time, despite change. Memory supports this continuity by providing psychological threads, recurring values, repeated themes, familiar emotional patterns. Even when life has shifted dramatically, certain inner signatures remain. The way you comfort others, the way you learn, the kinds of beauty you notice. At night, self-continuity can feel especially present because the mind naturally reviews time. Nostalgia often strengthens self-continuity by reminding you, I have a history. This can be stabilizing in uncertain seasons. You don't have to be exactly the same as you were. Continuity doesn't mean sameness. It means connection, a bridge from then to now. And that bridge can feel like a quiet support beneath you as you rest. Fact 82. Narrative identity. Beyond continuity, humans build narrative identity, an internalized, evolving story that explains who we are and what our life means. Psychologist Dan McAdams and others describe identity as a life story, complete with chapters, themes, turning points, and characters. Memory provides the raw scenes, and interpretation provides the plot. This narrative helps create unity and purpose, making life feel less random. Yet narratives can be rewritten. As you change, you may reinterpret old events with new compassion or new clarity. At night, the mind sometimes edits the story softly, like an author revising by lamplight. You may remember an old choice and suddenly understand it differently. This can be soothing rather than activating if you let it stay gentle. You don't have to solve your whole life tonight. You can let the story be incomplete, still unfolding, still allowed to hold mystery. Fact 83. Meaning-making. Nostalgia is not only about pleasure. It can be a tool for meaning-making. Psychological research suggests people often use nostalgic reflection to find value in difficult chapters, integrating them into a coherent narrative. This connects to ideas like cognitive reappraisal, where the mind reframes an experience, and post-traumatic growth, where individuals report positive psychological change after adversity. This is not a promise or a cure. It is a pattern observed in how humans sometimes adapt. Nostalgia can highlight what was learned, what was survived, and who helped along the way. It can also reveal what you cared about most, because longing often points to values. At bedtime, meaning-making can be very quiet. A simple recognition that a hard year contained moments of courage, or that a loss also revealed love. You can let meaning arise without forcing it, like a thought that gently ripens in the dark. Fact 84. Self-esteem regulation. Nostalgic reflection often brings a temporary boost in self-esteem. Studies suggest that when people recall cherished moments, times of acceptance, competence, love, the mind receives a form of self-affirmation. It's as if memory offers evidence that you are worthy and capable. This can strengthen ego resources, especially when the present feels uncertain. Importantly, this isn't arrogance, it's regulation. The psyche uses supportive memories as internal nutrition. You might remember an accomplishment not to brag, but to stabilize. I can handle things. Or you might remember a kind relationship not to cling, but to reassure. I am lovable. At night, this regulation can help the nervous system settle. If your mind offers you a gentle, proud moment, you can receive it like warm tea, quietly, without excitement. Let it soften you, then let it fade naturally as sleep takes over. Fact 85. Existential refuge. When the present feels chaotic or meaningless, people often turn toward the past as an existential refuge. Researchers connect this to ontological security, the feeling that life is stable, coherent, and real. Nostalgia can restore this security by reminding you of continuity. There were days before this one, and there will be days after. The past becomes proof that you have lived through seasons, that life has had texture and meaning. This is not escapism in its simplest form. It can be a stabilizing return to known emotional coordinates. At bedtime, existential questions sometimes feel louder because the world goes quiet and the mind becomes spacious. If you notice yourself seeking refuge in memory, you can allow it. Let the past be a soft anchor, not to keep you stuck, but to keep you steady enough to rest. Fact 86. The ideal self. Nostalgia can also shape the future by connecting you with your ideal self, the person you wish to become. Self-discrepancy theory suggests distress can arise when there's a gap between who you are and who you want to be. Nostalgic memories sometimes reduce this gap by reminding you of past moments when you embodied values you still admire: courage, creativity, kindness, discipline, playfulness. The memory becomes a message. This has been real in you before. Rather than only longing, nostalgia can supply direction. It offers a gentle alignment between your history and your aspirations. At night, you don't need to turn this into a plan. You can let it be quiet guidance, like a star seen through thin clouds. The ideal self doesn't demand perfection. It invites return. Return to what matters. Return to what feels true. Fact 87. Cultural identity. Identity is not only individual, it is also cultural. Cultural identity is shaped by shared memories, stories, holidays, music, language, rituals, and collective experiences. Research in acculturation and heritage psychology suggests that cultural memory provides belonging and structure. It tells you what your community values and how it understands life. Nostalgia often intensifies around cultural cues, foods, festivals, childhood customs, especially for people living far from their place of origin. These cues can evoke a feeling of rootedness, even when geography has changed. At bedtime, cultural nostalgia can feel like being wrapped in familiar patterns: a remembered prayer, a lullaby, the rhythm of a family phrase. This is not simply sentimental, it is psychological grounding. It reminds the mind that you come from somewhere, maybe many places, and that these origins continue to live in you as memory and meaning. Fact 88. Autobiographical memory base. Autobiographical memory can be viewed as a personal database used to solve present problems. The functional view of memory suggests we remember not only to revisit, but to adapt. When you face a challenge, your mind searches for relevant past experiences. Have I felt this before? What helped then? This is a quiet intelligence. It turns memory into guidance. Nostalgia can be part of this function too, because it reactivates coping, values, and social support. You might remember a time you started over, a time someone believed in you, a time you endured uncertainty. Even if the details differ, the emotional lesson may transfer. At night, you can let this database rest. You don't have to mine your past for solutions while you're trying to sleep, but it can be soothing to remember. Your mind has resources stored within it. You are not beginning from nothing. Fact 89. Nostalgia as a moral compass. Memories can guide ethics as well as identity. Nostalgia as a moral compass refers to how recalling past moral choices, moments of integrity, kindness, or even regret can shape future behavior. Research on moral identity and self-regulation suggests that people strive to act in ways consistent with their self-concept. When nostalgia highlights moments you're proud of, it can reinforce values and encourage ethical consistency. When it highlights regret, it may motivate repair, not through shame but through learning. In a sleep-friendly approach, this doesn't need to become self-judgment. It can be gentle reflection. What kind of person do I want to be? The past offers examples. And sometimes the simplest moral comfort at night is remembering one small good act, proof that your life includes goodness, that your story contains care. Fact 90. Temporal self-appraisal. Temporal self-appraisal is the process of comparing your current self to your past self. Research suggests people often use this internal comparison to maintain a positive self-view, noticing improvement, resilience, or wisdom gained. Sometimes the comparison goes the other way, feeling you've lost something. Yet even that can clarify what you value. This isn't vanity, it's self-evaluation across time, a natural cognitive habit. Nostalgia can influence temporal self-appraisal by spotlighting certain chapters, especially those where you felt vivid, hopeful, or connected. At bedtime, if you find yourself comparing, you can soften the process. Rather than ranking versions of yourself, you can simply observe the continuity. You have been many selves, each shaped by context. You can honor the past self without needing to return to them. You can appreciate the present self without needing to prove anything tonight. Chapter 10. Consolidation, memory processing during sleep. Fact 91. Sleep and memory integration. Sleep is not only rest, it is integration. Research in systems consolidation suggests that during sleep, new memories become woven into existing knowledge networks. Experiences from the day, facts, emotions, skills, are reorganized, linked, and sometimes abstracted into gist. This helps the brain learn patterns rather than merely store episodes. Integration is partly why a problem can feel clearer after a good night's sleep. The mind quietly connects what seemed separate. At bedtime, this is comforting because it means you don't have to finish processing everything consciously. Sleep will do some of the work for you. Your brain is like a calm archivist working the night shift, moving notes from temporary folders into a deeper library. As you drift, you can trust that your mind knows how to file, connect, and make sense without your effort. Fact 92. REM sleep and emotional processing. REM sleep, often associated with vivid dreaming, plays a role in emotional processing. Research suggests REM may help reduce the emotional sting of certain memories, allowing the brain to revisit them in a different neurochemical environment. This can support emotional regulation, making difficult material feel less sharp over time. The idea is not that REM deletes emotion, but that it helps decouple overwhelming arousal from the memory's content, so you can remember without reliving as intensely. Dreams may be part of this, though theories vary. In a gentle bedtime frame, REM is like the mind's nighttime therapist, not offering words but offering process. It allows emotions to be moved, reshaped, and softened. If you sometimes wake after an intense dream feeling lighter or clearer, this may reflect emotional processing at work. And even if you don't remember dreams, REM can still be doing its quiet labor. Fact 93. Slow-wave sleep SWS. Slow-wave sleep, often called deep sleep, is strongly linked to memory consolidation, especially for declarative memories. Research suggests that during slow-wave sleep, the brain may export memories from the hippocampus to longer-term cortical storage, supported by rhythms like delta waves and sleep spindles. This is sometimes described as a dialogue between hippocampus and cortex, temporary storage communicating with durable storage. In a soothing metaphor, slow-wave sleep is like moving boxes from a hallway into labeled rooms, clearing space for tomorrow's experiences. This process is one reason deep sleep feels restorative. The brain is not only resting, it's organizing. At bedtime, you can let this image calm you. You are not trying to control memory tonight. You are allowing a natural biological rhythm, slow, powerful, and quiet, to do what it evolved to do. Fact 94. Synaptic homeostasis hypothesis. The synaptic homeostasis hypothesis suggests that sleep helps regulate synaptic strength across the brain. During the day, learning and stimulation can increase synaptic connections, raising the brain's energy demands and noise levels. Sleep may help scale down synapses globally, preserving important connections while reducing overall load. This is sometimes described as the brain cleaning up signal clarity, keeping what matters, trimming what doesn't. The result is cognitive refresh, improved ability to learn and focus the next day. In a calm nighttime frame, this is deeply reassuring. You don't need to think your way into clarity. Sleep can restore clarity biologically. It's like lowering the volume of a crowded room so you can hear the meaningful voices again. As you listen now, you can already practice this downscaling emotionally, letting the day's unnecessary signals fade into the background. Fact 95. Replay phenomenon. During sleep, the brain often reactivates patterns of neural firing associated with waking experiences, a process known as replay. Research in animals and humans suggests replay supports learning, especially for sequences and spatial tasks. It's as if the brain quietly rehearses the day, rerunning certain pathways to strengthen them. This doesn't require conscious effort. It happens beneath awareness. Replay may also explain why sleep can improve performance on skills practiced earlier. In a gentle sense, your brain is like a musician practicing softly in another room while you rest. It repeats what was important, smoothing the rough edges. At night, you might notice fragments of the day drifting through your mind. You don't have to follow them. They may simply be the conscious echo of a deeper replay process. Let the fragments pass like slow trains in the distance. Fact 96. TMR, Targeted Memory Reactivation. Targeted Memory Reactivation, or TMR, is a research approach where subtle cues, often sounds or smells, are paired with learning during the day and then represented during sleep to strengthen specific memories. Studies suggest that, under controlled conditions, these cues can bias the brain's replay and consolidation processes. This is a fascinating window into how cue-dependent memory remains active at night. It's also a reminder that sleep is receptive, even when consciousness is offline. For a sleep channel, it's important to keep this educational. TMR is experimental and not a guaranteed sleep learning tool for everyday use. Still, the concept itself is calming. It tells you that gentle sensory cues can interact with sleeping brain rhythms. Soft, consistent sounds, like the tone of this narration, may become associated with relaxation over time, helping your system learn. This sound means it's safe to rest. Fact 97. Dreaming as memory sorting. One theory suggests dreaming may be a byproduct of the brain sorting and integrating memories. The activation synthesis theory proposes that dreams emerge as the brain attempts to make sense of internally generated activity, while the continuity hypothesis suggests dreams reflect waking concerns and experiences in altered form. Across theories, a common theme is that dreams are connected to memory processing. They blend fragments, themes, emotions, and imagery, sometimes strange, sometimes beautiful. In a sleep-friendly documentary tone, you can see dreams as the mind's collage-making studio. It cuts and rearranges, not to confuse you, but to integrate experience in a symbolic language. You don't need to interpret dreams perfectly for them to be useful. Often, the value is simply that dreaming allows the brain to move material around, to test associations, to reduce emotional intensity, and to weave new connections, quietly, creatively, while you rest. Fact 98. Sleep deprivation and false memory. Sleep supports memory accuracy as well as memory strength. Research suggests that sleep deprivation can increase the likelihood of false memories, partly due to cognitive interference and reduced prefrontal control. When the brain is tired, attention becomes less precise, source monitoring weakens, and the mind may fill gaps more aggressively. This can lead to increased suggestibility and confusion about details. The takeaway is not fear, it's compassion. If your memory feels scrambled during periods of poor sleep, it may reflect normal neurocognitive strain rather than personal failure. At bedtime, you can treat sleep as a form of mental calibration. It helps the brain separate signals from noise, reality from imagination, and details from guesses. Even one good night can restore some clarity. So tonight, you are not only seeking rest, you are supporting the mind's ability to remember with greater steadiness tomorrow. Fact 99. The glymphatic system. During sleep, the brain engages in maintenance. The glymphatic system is a waste clearance pathway that appears to be more active during sleep, helping remove metabolic byproducts from brain tissue through cerebrospinal fluid movement. While research is ongoing, the general idea is that sleep supports neuromaintenance, which is important for long-term brain health. In a calming metaphor, the glymphatic system is like nighttime housekeeping, quietly rinsing the day away so the brain can function smoothly. This is one more reason sleep can feel like renewal. It's not only psychological, it's physiological care. You don't have to supervise this cleaning. It happens best when you let go. So as you listen, you might imagine your brain gently rinsing itself, like a tide washing a shore clean, leaving the surface calmer, clearer, and more ready for morning. Fact 100. Memory stability. Once a memory is consolidated, especially through sleep, it often becomes more stable and resistant to interference. Research suggests that stabilized memories are less easily disrupted by new information because they have been integrated into broader cortical networks. This is not absolute. Memories can still change, especially when reactivated, but consolidation increases durability. In a reassuring bedtime frame, memory stability means that you don't have to keep gripping what matters. You can let go and trust that important learning will not disappear the moment you stop thinking about it. Sleep helps protect what's worth keeping, and in a deeper sense, this is the quiet gift of the sleeping brain. It turns fragile impressions into lasting patterns, transforming moments into part of you. As you drift towards sleep, you can allow that transformation to happen naturally, without effort, like ink drying on a page, completing the day's gentle writing. Tonight, you've been traveling through memory the way you might travel through a familiar town at night, slowly, with quiet streets and warm lights behind windows. And as we close, you don't need to hold every detail. You can let the ideas settle into you like snow, soft, silent, and naturally arranging itself. There is something deeply comforting about learning how human your mind really is, how normal it is for attention to narrow and widen, how natural it is for memory to keep some things and release others, how gentle the brain can be, especially when you stop demanding perfection from it. And so as you rest, we'll softly revisit the landscape we walked through, without effort, without pressure, just a slow return like retracing steps in calm moonlight.